We're on to the book of First Chronicles today, and interesting, this is a normal length book in that there's 29 chapters, but there's not a great deal in it that's new, so actually we're going to do this whole video as chapters 1 to 29, and so it's the summary as well. The first 14 pages of this, 9 chapters, is genealogies of people coming from, starting with Adam, as in Adam and Eve, coming all the way down to where we are, actually even going slightly beyond where we got to, because at the end of the book of 2 Kings, the Israelites have just been exiled, and there's talk of a genealogy for descendants of David that continue after that point of exile. So it's all kind of boring, it has to be said. There's quite a lot of genealogy stuff in the rest of it, so it's not a fun read, the Book of Chronicles. I don't think it's really meant to be read, I guess. But between the genealogies, after the first 9 chapters, there is quite a bit of storytelling, as it were, largely about the death of Saul, the rise of David, and then the handover to Solomon. There is a sort of difference in tone because it's largely consistent with what we've come across before, but there are the tone of David's relationship with God is very positive, whereas David had his fair share of problems. In this, it's all about David talking about praising God and pledging his allegiance, that sort of thing. The genealogies generally, though, are incredibly dull. I mean, it even goes to the point it lists the musicians who played music at the tabernacle and a bunch of David's staff at the palace sort of thing, and warriors, and it's really boring. I mean, useful for historians, and I guess that does put this very much squarely in the category of historical document, but in no way fun to read. I did spot one inconsistency, one of the inconsistencies. Early on there's a mentioning of Aaron's descendants, isn't Aaron the brother of Moses? And there's no mention of Nadab and Abihu, who we had in episode 23, I think it was. God set fire to them in front of their dad, and I still haven't quite got over this. But then it's later given Aaron's descendants again, because there is some repetition here, where Nadab and Abihu are back in it. I mean, I don't really care. It doesn't matter, I don't think, but it's worthy of mention that there are some inconsistencies at different ends of the book, which presumably was written by one person who then didn't proofread it very well. We do have the bit again that we had in episode 76, where Nathan prophesies what sounds like Jesus coming at some stage. The prophecy is restated here as again coming from Nathan, and again is consistent with the previous one, except that it leaves out the part where it mentioned previously that when the Son of God does wrong, he will be punished by men, which is the bit obviously that sits, well, Jesus didn't do any wrong, as far as I'm aware. So that doesn't fit, but here it doesn't have that part in it, so don't quite know what's going on there. It's just no help at all, really, is it? It was a bit that was deeply confusing, and this hasn't helped with that one little bit. There is a part a little bit later on, though, where David is relaying to his son Solomon that this person is going to be the son of God, and he's going to build God's temple and kingdom that's going to endure forever. But the way David tells it to Solomon, it sounds like David is saying that Solomon is going to be the son of God. And I'm not sure if that's a translation issue or if David is confused, but I said from episode 76 it seemed pretty solid that we were predicting Jesus, other than the sin part. Now suddenly we've introduced the whole thing stated again, but without the sin part. But we've also had the suggestion that Solomon is the son of God. And I'm not sure if I'm just misreading that. Quite possibly. I would have thought someone might have mentioned that Solomon was supposed to be the son of God and blew it or something. But yeah, it's made that bit even more complicated. The really interesting part of this, though, and the bit I'm going to take with it, I think, as the defining point of the book of First Chronicles, I think, is that Satan arrives. It's chapter 21, it just starts off with, here's Satan, and it's no mention of where he came from or who he is or anything, just Satan appears. I have my Hebrew Bible with the literal translation. I've checked it in there, and yep, it does seem to be saying Satan. And I gather, I've Googled and everything, just checked that this is the first reference in the Bible to Satan, so there's no sort of introduction or anything. The idea, anyway, gets even more confusing because it says that Satan incites David to take a census of the soldiers within the Israelites. This then ties back to episode 79, where God tells David to take a census, and then suddenly later on we find out that David's in trouble and we're not clear why. This is the one, if you recall, it was where David was given a choice of punishment for the Israelites. They could either have 3 years of famine, 3 months of being pursued by their enemies, or 3 days of plague, and David chose the plague. And it was confusing at that point because it wasn't clear what the sin had been. It's now saying that the sin is because David was incited to do a census by Satan. But that conflicts with what was said earlier on, where it said that God told David to do the census. So, and why Satan cares about David doing a census, I don't know. He gets in trouble with his commander Joab, who in episode 79, is annoyed with David because he's sulking about stuff and he's supposed to be cheering up his men. So those two bits, quite significantly inconsistent, and was a bit of a damp squib for Satan's arrival, isn't it? So yeah, I don't quite know what to do with that. I do at some point need to do a tangent video on Satan because that's even weirder. Although interestingly, to keep us going until then, I got my Hebrew Bible out and checked the whole Satan thing, and then put it into Google, checked, and the Hebrew pronunciation of Satan is Shatan, which, well, it's very funny, isn't it? And if you're 12 years old, I'm pretty sure you find that funny too. But yeah, so Book of First Chronicles, not fun to read. Well, you're welcome, just don't do it. It's very boring, it's very long, and there's not a great deal in it. It's not like Deuteronomy, which was a retelling of a lot of the Exodus story, but added some extra detail that was interesting. This does add a bit of extra detail, but it's not very interesting. So yeah, I think we'll move on to Second Chronicles, which seems like a bit of more of the same, so probably won't be many videos for that one either.